Welcome back to the Hockey Show, and today we are talking about the current bananas race that is the Eastern Wild Card chase right now. It is up in the air. It's all for grabs. We're less than 10 games left. Some teams, 6 games left of them to play for the season. It is still totally up for grabs who could end up being in the playoffs at this point. It is completely up in the air and is currently being led by the Islanders and the Penguins. Now, the last time I made the same exact type of video, like maybe 2 weeks ago at this point, and the race has not changed like at all. Maybe like the positioning, but basically the same story, the same spots, the same points, the same ties are still going on 2 weeks later. So everyone just being pretty consistent. Some teams being consistently meh, and some teams consistently just being good enough to make it in. And the Islanders and the Penguins have been those two safe teams the entire time. So let's start off with the Islanders. For the longest time now, they have been in the first wild card spot, looking pretty safe up there, pretty high and mighty. I thought their spot was going to be pretty challenging to hang on to when I made this video like 2 weeks ago, because there was at that point like maybe 20 games left of the season. And at that point, they had the least amount of games played. I mean, the most amount of games played, least left to play. And I thought another team could run them over by then. But they've been holding on to their spot, and they still have the least amount of games left with 6 games remaining. Now, their last 10 games, they're being pretty good last 10 games so far, 6-3-1. So they're on a winning streak right now. Not winning streak, but they're in a winning attitude right now. With 87 points, they're 5 points ahead of the second wild card spot in the Penguins. So above the second team, they're doing pretty good there, but with the games remaining is what could be scary, especially when you look down towards the bottom toward teams like a Buffalo or the Ottawa Senators with 2 or 3 games left ahead of them to play left. It seems kind of scary there, especially when you look at the Islanders' road that they're going to have to go against. They're going to play Tampa Bay twice in their last 6 remaining games, which Tampa Bay, that might be actually more of a blessing at this point, as Tampa Bay's been pretty shaky over the last little while now. So who knows how those games could go. Carolina is going to be a challenge regardless of anything. Philadelphia playing for spoils right now. They're not in a good enough spot to get a good pick, and they're not in a good enough spot to make the playoffs, so they're playing to spoil someone's season at this point. Could be a run-over game for either team. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the type of game Philly wins 6-0 or the Islanders win 6-0. Washington Capitals, though, that is another scary one. As you can see at the bottom here, Capitals playing for their spot to stay alive as well, and that is closer towards the end of the season. So Washington is going to be playing for the lives as well. So that'll be a life or death game, a very challenging one to make it into the playoffs there. And then Montreal to finish it off. I mean, Montreal, it could be that once again. Montreal's playing for spoils, kind of. They do have a pretty good pick so far, but I'm sure towards the end of the season, guys like Cole Caulfield, and I'm sure the Islanders, Horvat, and Barzal are going to be playing to make the playoffs at that point too. But Caulfield and Suzuki, those guys are going to be wanting to put on a good show to end off the season on the right way. So, it's interesting, challenging road for the last 6 games for the Islanders. So, I don't really know what to make of it. They don't have an easy road. They have I would say they have like a 60-40 road of like 60% pretty challenging, and then 20%, who knows what could happen. And I would say easy challenges, but they don't have like the Coyotes or the Sharks they're running into. It's the Canadians and the Flyers. So, interesting there. But Islanders looking pretty safe, but other teams being 6 points ahead of the Panthers outside of a spot right now. I would say the Islanders are looking pretty good at this point, but with the Buffalo Sabres, which I'll get to, could be challenging. But so far, 6-3-1, they're looking good over their last 10. I don't see them losing that spot. But the Penguins, I could see losing it. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, 4-6-0 in their last 10 games, 82 points. So they're only 1 point above the teams outside of the Panthers, and then they're only 5 points away from the 3 tied teams down here. So the Penguins are in a dangerous spot, but they have 8 games remaining. That is the thing. They have 2 games in hand against the Islanders. So they win those 2 games, they're up to 86 points, and they're 1 point behind the Islanders. So they're looking pretty good, I gotta say. But their winning ways are not to be right now. 4-6-0, and their road ahead is not an easy one. Nashville, sorry. Nashville, another team who's playing their life right now to keep into the playoffs. But they are pretty banged up, a lot of injuries, so might be an easy road to knock them down, but maybe not. But who will not be is the Boston Bruins, who they'll be running into. Definitely not an easy matchup there. No team's going to have an easy matchup against the Bruins. So that's another hard one. Philadelphia, their rival. No matter what position these two teams are in, they're going to be trying to kill each other regardless. So it doesn't matter if Philly was number 32 in the league and Pittsburgh was number 1. That's going to be a challenge regardless, because they're playing to kill each other no matter what's going on. New Jersey, though, a team that is going to be a challenge for them, as well as Minnesota. Minnesota and New Jersey in a row. That two teams, not an easy road. Then they kind of finish off maybe on an easy 3-game streak. Detroit, at that point, they're not really, they could have been the last team I put here on the whiteboard, but I just don't see Detroit making it anywhere near the playoffs. So Penguin, maybe an easy run there, but then Chicago and Columbus, they should be able to finish out the season strong there. So really, if they are a playoff team, they will get those wins against New Jersey and Minnesota and Nashville, right? If they are worthy of being in the playoffs, they will beat those teams. So it is kind of like this is their prove yourself in these last 8 games. If you're worthy of the playoffs, you'll beat those teams. If you don't, one of these teams below you will pass you. So that's kind of the story right now. So the Penguins, 1 point above, they're in the most dangerous spot right now. And the Florida Panthers, 1 point behind them. And they have 7 games remaining, though. So the Penguins have 1 game in hand against the Panthers. But the Panthers definitely have an easier route, sort of, up until the end of the season. But maybe this momentum of what they could go on here could carry them through that. So I'll talk about that here. So they're 5-4-1 in their last 10. So pretty... I guess they're technically above 500, but barely. They're like 55 percent right now, so not really the best there. But they're definitely in the winning ways. But that 4 though is 4 losses in a row they just went through. They finally rebounded last game against Toronto, actually. So the Florida Panthers, they keep going back and forth, and that's been kind of the story this whole year. And this year and last. Last year they're superstars. The year before that they're whatever. This year they're whatever again. So Panthers, they just need to choose a route to go on. Are they going to be a good, great team that can beat the Toronto Maple Leafs? Or are they going to be another team that's going to go on losing streaks against Philadelphia? And I think they lost to Washington as well. So the Florida Panthers, they got to choose a route to go on. They were looking good for a little bit. I thought they were going to make it in, but now they're back to losing again. So really, this is, once again, prove yourself these last 7 games. They've got Montreal coming up, so that could be probably an easy walk for them. That was the team that they beat. Was it 10-1 or something? Not 10-1. It was 10-5 or something the other day, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. So that should be an easy walk in the park. Columbus, another easy walk in the park. Buffalo, though, who's the next team I'll be talking about, that could be an interesting one. Another team tied with them, actually not tied with them, I haven't gotten to those guys yet. Just below them with 3 points behind them, 5 points to make it into the playoffs is Buffalo. So that is another game that both these teams are going to be playing for their lives. Florida might be in a playoff spot by then, playing to keep in that one. Buffalo might be right on their tail by then. So who knows in a week's time where those two teams are in the standings and how much more important that game will be. Then Ottawa, another team playing. So they got 2 games in a row that should be easy walks. 2 games in a row after that where they're going to have to be playing against teams playing for their lives, just like the Panthers will be. And then they've got Washington. So they've got 3 teams in a row. I'm sorry. All 3 of the teams that are below them, I just realized to me, that are tied and right behind them in the standings playing for those spots. So this is really going to be the gauntlet for the Panthers. I think this is a great story. I'd love to see, out of these teams, I think Panthers are the ones that most likely make it into the playoffs, and that would be incredible. If those teams all play, if they went through them and they got those 3 wins in a row, and at that point it should be 5 because they should beat Montreal and Columbus, they will be on a 5-game winning streak. I think that easily cements them into the playoff spot. But then they got Toronto and Carolina to worry about, and that'll be a real challenge for them is to show if they're worthy of the playoffs and what type of team they'll be going in there. And if they make it in, they're going to be playing a team like Boston most likely. So interesting for Florida there. Maybe that winning streak there is what could overpower them and get them a hot start against a team like Boston, and maybe, who knows, maybe upset them at that point. So if they, I mean, obviously would have had things to put together by that point. They'd be hot going into the playoffs with all that momentum. So Florida, that could be an interesting showcase there if they're worthy of the playoffs, or they could easily squander it like they have been lately. And instead of taking that brass ring and making it into the playoffs, they might just turn their head and walk away and just lose again. So who knows? So moving on to Buffalo. So one of the three teams still tied. I mean, they haven't been tied the whole time, but back at it, being tied with Washington and the Ottawa Senators. So Buffalo with 77 points, and all three of these teams tied are squandering their chances of of getting into the playoffs. 3-4-3 in their last 10 games. Not what you want to see if you're trying to make it in. 9 games remaining, though, and that is the key for the Buffalo Sabres. They have almost 10 games left. They got 3 games in hand against the Islanders. Only one, though, against the Penguins. But they have an interesting route for them as well. Not an easy one for Buffalo remaining here. But maybe this is the challenge that they need. Maybe this is the pressure test as well. Just like the teams above them. Are you worthy of making it? But Buffalo's got the hardest road ahead of them than those guys. Rangers starting, I think that game is actually tonight. The Rangers, not an easy task for them. Philadelphia, like I said, a team that's kind of playing for spoils at this point. Florida, the team that I was just talking about up here, that both playing for that spot. Maybe they'll be even tied at that point. Who knows? Detroit, a team that's trying. I mean, they got a lot of young guys, so those guys are still playing. The players don't tank, and they're going to be trying to make it into the playoffs as well. They're not going to. Red Wings, they should be down here. I should have just put them on the board, but they're not making it in. But they going to give their hardest try. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Who knows? Maybe they go on a 10-game winning streak and they end up in the second card spot. Who knows? But Detroit and then Carolina. Once again, Carolina is going to be a deadly threat no matter what team's going up against them. So another hard battle for them. And then back to New York again against the Rangers. So 2 times against the Rangers, not easy. And then New Jersey, and then Ottawa, and then Columbus. So they at least end off the year with a simple task. But oh my goodness, the Buffalo Sabres, they do not have an easy road to make it into the playoffs at this point. And I think it actually is for the best. I keep saying this. I'm going to say it again when I make my video about them either missing it or making it into the playoffs, or whenever I make the video, if they make it and blah, blah, blah. I think Buffalo, if they don't make it, is kind of for the best, because next year they're going to bring in Devin Levi. They're going to have that goaltender. And yes, I think they would have broke the streak for the longest amount of time missing a playoffs or something, because I think they're tied right now. And if they make it to next year, it'll be the longest one. So if they make it in if they miss this year, and I think they're for sure going to make it in next year with that goaltending help back there and everyone just getting better and bringing up more young players to fill in this already superstar, maybe not superstar studded, but just these breakout guys who are going to get better next year, and with the helpers coming in, I think it might be for the best for Buffalo to miss this year and then go into next year just full of steam and ready to go and just show what they got going into the playoffs. Because this year, even if they make it in, I think they're going to lose, right? They're going to they're going to play Boston most likely, and Buffalo, I think if they made it in, would be exciting to see, and I think they might be more of a challenge to Boston than a team like Florida or the Penguins or the Islanders. Not the Islanders are going to, I don't think they're going to play Boston, but Buffalo would be an interesting challenge, because I think a guy like Tage Thompson, that whole lines of like Dylan Cousins and Skinner and Ben the Back Dolan, I think it would be a challenge, but there's just no way with their goaltending. There's just no way. There's just no way in my eyes that Boston would be upset by them, but I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes a 7-game series between the two. Just thinking about it, like, it would be the perfect foil, like Columbus to Tampa Bay. I think Buffalo to Boston, that would be the perfect, like, against game for them. But anyways, just all that to say, they're pretty far behind. They've got a tough road ahead, and I would say it's almost unlikely they make it in, but 5 points behind the Penguins, and if they can go through this pressure test and maybe they go on a run, maybe they win against the Rangers, against Florida, against Detroit, that's enough points to put them in that spot. So I don't know. Who knows at this point? I don't think they can make it in, but it's going to be a tough road. Ottawa with 77 points as well. Another team that's tied up there, 3-6-1, so even worse than the Florida Panthers. Not looking good for Ottawa at this point. They have 8 games in hand left. They have 2 games in hand against the Islanders, tied with the Penguins. 8 games remaining against Philadelphia. All these teams seem to play Philadelphia for some reason. So Philadelphia, Toronto, so that's going to be a tough one. Columbus, another easy, probably walk in the park. Carolina, Florida, Tampa Bay. So those 3 games going to be tough there. Carolina, and then Buffalo. So Ottawa going to have a tough time in their road as well. But once again, all these games, all these teams, I know no game is going to be easy in the NHL, but all of them have like that. This is their pressure test. This is the kind of to see what team is worthy, who's going to make it. So far, it looks like these 3 bottom teams, they're not earning it. They're not earning it. And like, take a look at the Florida Panthers, 5-4-1. They're making it in, probably. They're winning. The Penguins, 4-6-0. They're not looking too good. They might drop out. So right now, it just shows you that survival of the fittest. The Panthers are looking pretty good right now. They might squeeze out the Penguins. The Islanders need to play good to stay above it, as they have the most games played so far, and they're doing good, 6-3-1. So it looks like the guys at the bottom, losers find a way to lose, and winners find a way to win, and that's what it's looking right now. So Ottawa, tough road ahead for them as well, especially with like injuries to Chychrun, isn't even helping their chances, and they already got a tough road ahead of them already. It's going to be a tough road for them. Now, the Washington Capitals. It's unfortunate this year that they had so many injuries, and I'm going to talk about it when I get to their knockout video, or if somehow they squeeze in, I'll talk about it as well. But just their injuries. I mean, I did some calculations earlier today. Tom Wilson, if you take a guy like Tom Wilson, he's only played, I think, like 26 games this year, and he's got, was it 16 points. If you just elevate him to like the amount of games that Dylan Strome has played this year, who has 58 points. If you want, if you like just do the simplest oh God, what's it called? The stupid, he on track for whatever. If you just take his amount of games played and whatever, he would have made 48 points or so this year, which is not too. So basically, Tom Wilson, since coming back, they haven't been too shabby, and you could have added Wilson's 48 points into this lineup, injected Backstrom as well, kind of getting around the same amount of points, like a 40-point season into their games, and what a difference that would have made. That would have, I think, easily jumped them from where they are here to winning a few more games up here with the Penguins, or maybe even in the first wild card spot. So it's just a shame what the Capitals have gone through. 3-4-3, not looking too good last few games. 7 games left, so they don't even have that many games in hand, and they don't even have one against the Penguins here. Tampa Bay's up next, I think, tonight. Tough challenge there. Maybe Tampa Bay still kind of shaky. New York, the Rangers, not going to be easy. Montreal, I think don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure the Capitals have had a tough season with Montreal this year. Florida, I know Florida's had their number as well. The Islanders, I think the Isles might be an easier task for the Capitals. I already talked about up here. I think the Capitals might be overcome that one with their offense. Boston and then New Jersey, though, to end it off. I mean, I think it's just going to be slow, painful death for Washington fans, because it is a shame, because this year it could have been completely different. I think the way how far they've gotten with the injuries to this team, just like if they could have started the year with Backstrom and with Wilson, it would have been completely different. You're missing like 48 points from both those guys alone, just with the simplest of calculations, that you're missing that amount of points from your roster. I mean, at one point they had like $40 million in LTIR. Like, imagine your favorite team. Let's say your favorite team's the... who cares? Let's just say the Penguins. If you subtracted $40 million from their lineup, they're easily out of the wild cards race, right? So it's amazing what the Capitals have done this far with those injuries to them. So if they would have had them, they would have made it in. But it's a shame. But anyways, all that to say, in my head, my prediction is I think the Penguins are going to squander it or not. I don't know. I've always bet against the Penguins. And I finally have learned this year not to, so I'm going to take that back. I think the Penguins make it in, and I think the Florida Panthers are going to come close. And I think they're not going to make it. I think they're going to be like 1 point shy, or maybe it ends in a tie and the Penguins have the advantage over them and wins or something. I don't know. I think it's going to be a very close race between them. I think Ottawa's going to drop out of the race. I think the Capitals, with Ovechkin trying to pad up his points, they might get a little bit more games in, but with the types of teams they got to play against, I think they'll end up in the right behind the Panthers. And then I think Buffalo, they've got such a tough task ahead of them. I think they're going to crumble and turn into gold, and I think they're going to fall off too. So that's my prediction. I think these two teams, they've held up there so long that they're going to hang on to those spots and make it into the playoffs, knocking out all the teams. So basically, the standings are going to stay the same. So thank you for watching this. If you somehow enjoyed this video, please feel free to pick up your free subscription down below. You might as well. You've gotten this far. Just reward yourself and me. So thank you for that. And until next time, I've been your scarecrow-dressed host, Owen. Too sweet, and ta-ta for now.